Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the No Mustard podcast. This podcast is brought to you from the purchase of my magazines and art by viewers like you. You can learn more about my work or subscribe to the Fast Food Legend newsletter by visiting fastfoodlegend.com. I'd like to introduce my guest this week, Jane Pratt, a pioneering magazine editor and media figure best known as the founding editor of Sassy, the influential teen magazine that reshaped how teenagers were spoken to in the media. She went on to create Jane magazine and later the digital platform xoJane, helping define a more personal, confessional style of writing that has had a lasting impact on online culture. Her current platform is a Substack titled Another Jane Pratt Thing, where she continues the narrative of Sassy, Jane, and xoJane in a contemporary medium. Welcome, Jane. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. But you didn't tell me that this was something to do with no mustard, but I love mustard.
I'm allergic to mustard.
No. Stop right now.
Yes. Yes.
No.
And the
tragic.
character that I play on the internet, as you've seen, is a hamburger. So the fact that the hamburger would have a podcast called No Mustard, I thought was pretty funny.
That's hilarious, but I'm so sad for you because mustard is so good.
So for those of you who don't know who Jane is, just after you watch this, text your mom and say, I just watched an interview with Jane Pratt. And if she says, who is that? Your mom was not cool in the 90s. And her other response is going to be, send me the link. And for those of you who are my age and know who Jane is, you're probably wondering what the hell Jane Pratt is doing on the Fast Food Legend podcast. And that's kind of the story we're going to tell today. Because the first, you think Jane and I have absolutely nothing in common, right? She's a successful businesswoman, married, has kids, still lives in a big city, all that stuff.
I'm not married.
And
not married, but we'll
not
get
married.
to
Not married.
that.
She was married
on Wikipedia, but that's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, and I'm the polar opposite of everything in her life. I'm the polar opposite. But the one thing, we're going to discover we have quite a few things in common today. But the first and almost most important thing is that we are both unreasonably big fans of the band REM. And as such, we share a certain emotional vocabulary that all unreasonably big fans of any band would share.
Yes.
So Jane, I'm going to show you a picture, and I want you to tell me all about it, okay? And treat it like a Rorschach test. If you don't know anything about it, just whatever comes to mind, spit it out, okay?
Hey, this is fun. I like it.
Awesome. So this is in Mill Valley, California. This is the McDonald's. It's a very unique McDonald's. And to the viewers, in the description, along with everything else, I'm going to have a link to this McDonald's because it's one of the most unique McDonald's locations I've ever seen. And you're going to love it. So tell me all about it, Jane.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why it is so unique. First of all, I don't quite get what's so unique about it, but I think of Mill Valley, and I think of that I was born not too far from there, and I did.
You were born a 45-minute drive away. This is the closest fast food restaurant to Bolinas.
You're kidding me?
Dead serious.
Okay. Well, it was probably when did that one open though?
Based on the look, I'd say in the late 70s or early 80s.
Yeah, I probably had moved away by then. But I did a lot of McDonald's eating as a kid. A lot.
Where?
I can still, North Carolina, where we moved from there. We were there, and then we moved to North Carolina where McDonald's were already plentiful. Oh,
got it.
Right down. It was like a quick little walk, and you could get to a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Wendy's, everything you wanted. I can remember my McDonald's order. Yeah.
What was it?
I always got the regular burger. I just liked it really plain with the little cut up onions are still the best thing ever. And I didn't want ketchup on it, but I wanted mustard, believe it or not. Yep. And then small fries and a Coke. It was very basic, but that was my meal.
So I didn't know much about Mill Valley other than off the top of my head. I knew Huey Lewis and the News Sports cover was taken a picture was in a bar in Mill Valley. That much I knew. And you always hear about Mill Valley when you're reading history of Grateful Dead stuff because they all had money and this is where they went with their money. So I assume it's a fairly affluent community.
Yeah,
but the thing that I was most intrigued by when I was looking at this whole situation was that you initially, before you moved to North Carolina, which I believe you were around 13, is that right?
No, actually, I moved to North Carolina when I was 2. So I only lived in that area, Bolinas, San Francisco, for just my infancy.
So you don't remember it at all. Yeah, I was intrigued that it was like Bolinas was in such a remote location, yet it wasn't really that far from a big city.
Exactly. And by the way, I do still know it because I went back a lot to visit there. So I feel like I still kept up the vibe of where Bolinas was and what it was. Yeah, and to me, when you said Mill Valley, I got a little sense of like, oh, I don't fit in there because Mill Valley does sound fancy. I feel like that's like, big, expensive homes and that kind of thing. Where we lived was seriously it was a shack. It really was a shack. It was me, my mom, my dad, my older brother, and a dog. And it was basically one room. The building still exists, though, but they've made it nicer now. But yeah, Bolinas is weird. Bolinas is the place where they always take the sign down so that people can't find it.
Is that right?
Yeah, because they don't want people to. Yeah.
But it's on Google Maps.
Well, now, yeah. What are you going to do? What's taking down a physical sign going to do these days? But maybe they'll figure out how to get it off of Google Maps, too.
So on this podcast, I try not to talk about myself very much, but because it's you, I have to. And one of my most formative memories at 15 years old, I was in a psychiatric hospital for depression. And that depression came from the fact that my parents could not relate to me in any way. I was living in MTV world and they were living in the 50s and 60s. And so I'm in this hospital. It's the same hospital I later discovered where Alice Cooper first took up golf. And your television show was brand new. It was on first season of the show, or the first version of the show. And you had a guest on. I don't remember what the guest's problem was. But I vividly remember watching these teenagers in a psychiatric hospital, watching your show and talking about the guest and saying, wow, that person has problems. Wow, that person is crazy. And that stuck with me, like even now, in social media when I watch this stuff and the comments we get and things like that, how you were able to tap that nerve in such a way that really generated these very unique and weird responses to what was happening in the culture at the time. And so the other thing that I started reading a lot of magazines at that time in my life because I had more time on my hands. And that's something that you and I both have in common is we really love magazines. Yes. When magazines went digital with Apple and things like that, we had this flood. Like I used to go to Tower Records for hours and just go through all the niche magazines. Did you start to discover niche magazines you hadn't seen before? And if so, what was your favorite or which were your favorites?
Great questions. Can I go back to what you were saying about the being in the mental
hospital,
and the way that the other kids reacted there? I feel like that really encapsulates what I've been able to do and still do my entire career is make people feel like, oh, there's someone else out there who's really got issues, and therefore my issues are not something to be ashamed of. They're not something to hide. I can be open about them, and when I'm open about them, other people open up about theirs. And so I feel like but the setting that you experience that in and everything, just I'm going to remember that. That's perfect. I'm glad that those people responded in exactly that way. And the other thing is putting myself out there and showing all of my problems so that people see that also.
Before you tell me your favorite niche magazine, I'm going to tell you mine so I don't forget it.
Yeah.
Alaska's Best Kitchens.
Wow, sounds great.
They were incredibly average kitchens. And
Oh.
there was a whole magazine with reviews, and I kind of feel like in some ways Fast Food Legend was heavily inspired by that one. Which ones did you discover?
That's heaven. Alaska's Best Kitchens. You know what that reminds me of? And this is not yet to my favorite magazines, but when I was when I was still in college, I came to New York and I was an intern at a magazine called McCall's that doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of what they called the Seven Sisters. So there was like Ladies Home Journal, Good Housekeeping, the ones that were all the lady magazines. But we did every year a makeover of someone's living room. It was like you send in your pictures, and every picture that was sent in had the exact same brown lounge chair in it. We were like, everyone in America has this brown, like, reclining lounge chair in their living room. Oh, it's funny.
Remember in the 90s, every teenager had the same trumpet lamp, and you'd walk in somebody's house or apartment or whatever and be like, oh, I have that lamp.
Yes. What are the things with the, because a friend of mine still has these and I love it. What are the lava lamps? Lava lamps are still, I think, awesome, but they're weird when they're cold, when they're not turned on. It looks really like weird globs. Anyway, my friend happens to collect them. So, okay, so back to
favorite niche magazine.
Niche magazines. I mean, I always liked. I'm having trouble thinking of one, but I always like. I'm not. It's not about finding cool zines or anything like that, because I did find a lot of that, and a lot of people sent those to me and to us at Sassy to review and that kind of thing.
But I mean specifically once everything went digital, like you can open your phone and go on those apps and you can really find hardcore niche stuff. And that's really what I'm talking about.
I was still in Tower Records. Okay. So now, wow. So one of the things that I think is kind of the sad thing is that for me, is that I often don't know what the source is that I'm looking at. I'm reading things from magazines all the time online, but I'm often have to go back and see, oh, that was the Daily Mail, or this will show you the kind of stuff that was TMZ. That'll show you the kind of stuff I'm attracted to. or that was National Geographic or whatever it might be. I have found, so it's not like I've found a certain publication that I feel like, oh, that's hard to say.
Do you go on apps like Libby and just flip through the catalogs, or do you not even do that?
I don't do Libby. I don't do that. I mean, I finally got it. I didn't even have it for ages. I finally got it. But I go through Apple News and I just find stuff there that's, recommended to me and whatever. Or I'll go to, I know the ones I always like. I like The Atlantic, so I'll go to that. I have New York Magazine, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair. I have all of those basics. I consider basics.
The big names, yeah.
Big names, yeah. And then, but I end up reading a lot of, here's what I end up reading a ton of, is people's individual Substacks. And I will be shocked sometimes at some beautiful thing that I'm reading that is really, or something that's really good original reporting. And then I'll look and the person has like 3 followers, So
Right.
They're just doing their own fantastic job without any of the, the backup that we all had when we were doing it in print. So that I find a lot that way. And I assign a lot of writing that way, or people will come onto my Substack and they'll make a comment that is just such a great, well thought out comment. And I respond to almost every comment. Even though it gets way up there, but I like to respond, and it's fun for me to read them. So I'll often make assignments from that. I'll say, would you care to write this for me? And, we'll pay you, and that kind of thing. So.
Okay, we're going to look at a Burger King next.
Okay. Burger King was not McDonald's would have been my favorite.
So this is a Burger King in Lenox, Massachusetts.
Whoa, that's beautiful.
Tell me about that.
Whoa, I think it's absolutely gorgeous, by the way. I mean, I can't even believe that's a Burger King. It doesn't even seem like it has the Burger King colors. But
No, I think it's one of the ones where the town doesn't let them,
oh, but the
Lenox,
town lets them do that? Because that doesn't look like classic architecture of any kind that I'm familiar with, but that's cool. Wow. Tell me the town again.
Lenox, Massachusetts?
Wow. Okay. I went to school not too far from there for boarding school.
I know you did, and that's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, good.
So when I left the mental hospital, my parents stopped here on the way to drop me off at boarding school, age 15 in Massachusetts, same as you. Massachusetts boarding school, age 15 to 17. We did the exact same thing. However, you went to a very nice and proper boarding school, and I got sold off into a cult, which was which was a little bit different. But two things that I want to really focus on during this time in our lives. So we both have talked extensively in the past about how going to boarding school at age 15 was traumatic for us for very different reasons. Okay. And for me, one of the key things in retrospect was I somehow subconsciously knew it meant that I was not going to have a normal teenage life. And one of the things that I harped on for years, which would seem absolutely ridiculous even in retrospect, but I'm guessing maybe you had similar thoughts, was that I was not going to have a prom. Did you have a prom at your school?
There was a prom at Andover. There was. And I did not get I didn't get invited to the prom, but it was sort of it sort of didn't matter that much. The guy that I ended up going with was an underclassman, which is kind of like not really the thing to do, I guess. But he was the one that would go. And I can remember I remember the dress I was wearing. It wasn't like a formal prom or anything, but because it was Andover and, all the wealth that is around that, it was at some gorgeous location, like some huge mansion out in the country. So that's what I remember from it. Yeah. Oh, and I borrowed my dress from my friend. Yeah.
Did it feel like a normal prom to you, or did it feel like no?
No, it was not like a normal prom. I don't think I had any of those normal type of things ever at any of the places I went to school.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you also have a subconscious thing that this was going to ruin your opportunity to have a normal American teenage life, or was that not a factor?
I think that I already had a feeling that, let me just think for a second. Then the cat distracted me because the cat's trying to get out of the room and is kind of good at it, kind of good at jumping and pulling the handle. Okay. I never felt like I had a normal life. I don't think, I think because the way I was raised with, like hippie parents, in unconventional ways, and went to a really unconventional school in North Carolina before I went to Andover, very like progressive experimental school. I don't feel, I never felt like I was normal. I mean, I was like, okay, here's one example. My family took a trip to Washington, D.C., and we had no money ever. But Washington, D.C., we couldn't just pitch our tent and camp like we usually did wherever we went. So we got this one little hotel room, and we shared it with the other family we were traveling with. All of us in this one room. We would sneak in through the kitchen entrance so that they didn't see that we were all staying in this one room. And but anyway, we were going into the White House and to take one of those tours. And they looked at me and they said, and I was 11, and they said, Jane, you can't come in. They said, you have to get your shoes. You can't come in without shoes, because I was barefoot. And I said to my mom, oh, I left my shoes. She was like, oh, you left them in the car? Well, let's go get them. And I said, no, I left them in North Carolina. We had been there for 3 days. I'd been walking around Washington, D.C. for 3 days barefoot. That's the kind of kid, that's the kind of, unusual childhood that I grew up with. So I definitely never felt like prom. I mean, I think that's probably part of the reason I also never had any fantasies about like getting married, white picket fence, like any of that kind of stuff. Yeah. This is a good therapy session, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I mentioned a little bit earlier that, my issues with my parents and I living in different worlds and things like that. And then right as I was getting out of boarding school, Sassy was, going full steam ahead. That's when you wrote a book, your first book, about parents to understand their teenagers,
Yes.
which was a popular thing at the time. And something I'd really like to ask you about, which I haven't heard anybody ask you about, is now that you're on the other side of that,
Yeah.
do you see what happens to people as they get older, that they forget what it's like to be a teenager, which I feel is so much of the world's problems?
Yeah.
And is there anything you think that can be done to prevent that? It's a natural evolution of some kind.
Yeah.
Like, tell me all about that world from where you're at right now.
Yeah. I love that question, because when I was doing Sassy magazine and I was, right out of college, so 24 years old when it launched, I was people would often, I was still so in the mindset of the teenagers that I was writing to, and that was the whole idea. And I hired people who were also in that mindset or that age range. But parents would always say to me, you would never write this kind of stuff if you had a teenage child of your own. You would never give this kind of sex information, or you wouldn't even talk about drugs or any of this kind of stuff that we were writing about. And I held on to that, and then had a daughter of my own. She's past her teenage years now. And through the whole thing, I thought, no, I would do it exactly the same way. I would tell her all of that stuff. So that did not change at all. But I think that for me, I really want to stay connected to me. Okay, being 15 was that was a critical point in my life. That was where I feel like emotionally it was the hardest. And so I still can tap into that feeling. So I don't feel, now I don't know all the lingo and everything. I have to ask my daughter all the time, like, what does that mean or whatever? She makes fun of me. But the feeling of being that age, I feel like I haven't lost that. And I try not to lose the feeling of being any ages, because I like to be able to relate to all kinds of people. Yeah, ideally.
Let's have a look at another McDonald's.
Okay.
This one I'm sure you know well. I know it very well. This is 6th and Broadway.
Yes. Okay. Wait a sec. Okay. So this is where I am the worst mom in the world, because that is on, if I'm right, that's on 28th Street, corner 28th Street and 6th Avenue.
6th Street and Broadway in the Village.
Oh, 6th and...
By Astor Place.
Oh,
yeah, by Astor Place.
Waste one. Oh, now I know exactly. I walk past that all the time, because there is one on 28th and 6th that I used to take my daughter to all the time before her theater camp. But anyway, and the other parents would hate that I took, well, I would sometimes take their kids too. This is a little bit of a, a little off topic, but when I was raising my daughter, and we were in Fancy Tribeca for a while, and there was one McDonald's there, and then there was the other one that was up near their theater camp that I thought this was, and I would just give the kids what they wanted. So I would take their kids to McDonald's and have them hide the evidence. And the parents are like, why do they all want to come with you after theater camp? I was like, because I give them the good stuff. But anyway, okay. So this is the one that's on Broadway, down near Astor Place, just below Astor Place on the left side if you're going down Broadway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know this one very, very well. Have I ever eaten in this one? I don't know if I have, but I might have gone in there with my daughter at some point. Might have, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, this one, I mean, Astor Place, of course. That's all the memories around Astor Place. Astor Place Barber, all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, for some reason, this McDonald's isn't that appealing to me. Even looking at it right now,
It's terrible.
is pretty
It's a
bad.
homeless shelter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I picked this one because at the time when you played CBGB's opening
Yeah,
for the Lemonheads in Chia Pet,
yeah, good.
this would have been the closest McDonald's. This is the McDonald's I would have stopped at on the way to CBGB's as well.
Yeah.
Other people will say, but there's the one on St. Mark's. That one, ladies and gentlemen, was the Anarchy Cafe, which
Oh,
then closed and became a McDonald's. It was not there during the peak years of the 90s. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
let's talk about, I had said earlier why I had you on Fast Food Legend. The insane, when just reading stuff, the insane number of times we have crossed paths without knowing each other, sometimes decades apart, as we're going to discuss for a minute. So you opened for the Lemonheads, Evan Dando. And as people who have read my stuff before know, I woke up one morning to discover a comment on one of my YouTube videos from Evan saying he loved this song that I had recorded and he wanted to cover this song and to write him back, and did not leave an address to write him back. So the only way I could get in touch with him was through his mom, who I was friends with on Instagram, and he still never wrote me back. And then Evan's mom had grown up in the same small town where my dad worked and gone to the same college as my dad a decade apart, which is like, there's a lot of little
Yeah.
weird shit that crosses paths here. Now you left boarding school, you graduated or you left, you went to Oberlin and ended up with Vivian Tremble, which is, I just
Yeah.
learned the other day, which is another cross path a million ways. I ran away from boarding school because, like I said, we were sold into a cult, and so everybody left the boarding school by running
Well, I'd like to know
away.
the name of this boarding school.
The DeSisto School in
Yeah.
Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Sassy.
So anyway, when I left the school, I arranged a field trip into New York so that I could then run away on the field trip. And the first place I went was CBGB's. Hilly let me right in. Didn't like, I'm sure a million kids have like showed up at that door, and he's just been like, "Come right in." And I was one of those,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And the next time that I would see Hilly would be on the closing night when Patti Smith played, and I actually sat right behind Hilly in those like four little chairs on that little thing next to the soundboard. Tell me about that time of being in the band. You played violin, and
Yeah.
I've never heard anything else in your history about learning to play violin or how that came about. How long is that the only show you played? Did you play more shows?
Yeah.
Did you work with Evan again? Tell me all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I know it's funny. I feel like I've done I've just done a lot of different things in my life. You're making me realize, because violin was actually a big part of my life. I started taking lessons when I was 5. I had told my parents, they said pick an instrument because we were a very arty family, and they wanted us to all play instruments. And so I was picturing a piano, but the word violin came out of my mouth, and like I just got mixed up. I said violin. So there I was, started with violin when I was 5 years old, regular lessons all the way up through boarding school, and continued, so I studied classical violin for a really long time. So when Christina Kelly, who was one of my editors at Sassy, wanted to start this band called Chia Pet and invited me to be in it, I said, oh, I can play the violin. What I didn't realize, okay, and this was, we played CBGB's, I think, at least one time, and we played Wetlands. We opened for Bikini Kill there. So we went up to Bard College and played there. So don't downgrade my, band experience.
To one show. Okay. So we had a
Yes,
tour.
sir.
Okay.
We were on a major world tour. But I didn't realize, in that Lemonheads show where we opened at CBGB, I didn't realize that you couldn't just play your acoustic violin into a microphone, which is what I did. So it
I
was
pick up.
the craziest sound that first time. And then I learned after that you had to get the electric hookup and feed it into the amp or whatever. And so I started playing it that way. And we recorded some and everything. But then I had a little bit more of a history with Evan Dando because I think there was one issue of Sassy where, just for fun, instead of the little what do you call that? Like just like a little icon or something that's at the end of every story to show you you're at the end of the story that would have an S for Sassy or something like that. We just used a picture of his face for all of them for whatever reason. And he was a guest on my talk show, the Jane Pratt show on Lifetime. He came on. And yeah. So we had a lot of different little encounters over the years. What else were you asking about? Let's see.
Well, one other thing that I noticed, again, when I'm doing this, I have an outside perspective, right? So I'm looking at things in a completely different way than you would see them. One thing I was so interested in, Sassy initially started in Australia as a different magazine that was having some success. It comes here, you get that job, you take what they've done and you Americanize it, and then you're wildly successful. Evan did the same thing when he took over the Lemonheads and became the de facto member. A lot of those songs that were hits for him were Australian. They were Smudge covers and Smudge co-writes. And so you both had taken something from Australia, Americanized it, and became very successful in the process. Yeah.
I never knew that. Wow.
And that's not something you could do now because, of course, the original source would be online being successful on its own. Yeah.
Right.
And you both did it right around the same time, too, which is also interesting.
That is fascinating. Never knew that. I'm learning so much. I didn't consider Sassy to be the same magazine that was being published in Australia, but it was by that same company, and they did send me to Australia. I was just such a kid. It was such a wild thing to live there and work with them for about 3 months while I was developing what the American teen magazine would be. And it definitely shared similarities, but yeah, I considered it a new magazine, but that's really fascinating. And look how everyone knows the Lemonheads, but nobody knows. I mean, I don't.
Smudge, yeah. They don't smudge, yeah. All right, we're going to look at a fast food restaurant you haven't thought about in a minute, okay? This is the Roy Rogers in Times Square. It's in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. So it's in the ground level of 1515 underneath the Minskoff.
Yeah.
Do you remember this one?
Well, the reason I'm thinking that I would know it is because I think that this is where Sassy's offices were at one Times Square, and we would look out the windows and see pretty much this view. Am I right?
This is from 87, and I know that because of the Me and My Girl on the marquee. And the marquee, of course, was brand new at that time. It had been the Uris Theater knocked down. This was the rebuild. So this was all brand new. I don't even know if MTV had moved into 1515 yet. Maybe they had.
I don't think they were there when we were there. We started there in 87, exactly 87.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember that cameras without the C. I actually remember that. You see what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yeah. That's what really made me say, oh, I've looked at that a lot of times.
So Jane and my cross path here, number 9 billion, is that while you had this office here, you hired two consultants, one of whom was Fred Siebert. And Fred gave you the idea to do a crowdsourced magazine, which I will ask you about in just a moment. Okay. Fred, 30 years later, was the person who helped me when I was figuring out how to get my animated series off the ground and talked a lot of sense into me. And the reason I ended up being able to make that series was because of Fred. Now, crowdsourcing, of course, for a magazine was completely unheard of at that time.
Yeah.
Tell me all about that story.
Well, okay, hold on one sec. While I swig my seltzer. I don't, what I remember about Fred's involvement, I remember that he was brought in And I remember knowing what he had done with MTV. Um, but I don't feel like the idea of crowdsourcing the magazine, I feel like that came more from what I saw in Australia and what I saw in British publications, where the writing was much more first person, and so and a lot, we did a lot of things early on that people would now, that were sort of like our very rudimentary attempt at social media, before it existed, where I would put on the spine of Sassy, I put, should Jane get a nose ring? And then, like, after that issue came out, 3 months later, we get all the handwritten letters like, yes, yes, you should get one. My grandma writes in, no, no, you shouldn't get one. But she got overruled, and I went and got the nose ring and told the readers about it. That was like our version of kind of a crowdsourcing kind of thing that we were doing. But I love it if Fred was part of that. I don't really remember that, but he very well could have been.
When I say crowdsourcing, I'm talking specifically about the issue where you let the readers take over the writing of the magazine. That particular idea, at least he takes credit for. You can tell me if he's lying.
He might be right. He might be right.
Yeah.
I mean, now that you say it, okay, the reader produced issues. Yeah, we did those once a year. Oh, yes, Sam. Now I'm thinking, because I don't remember exactly where that idea came from, but it's sort of coming back to me that it was in collaboration with him, the idea. That's great. I'm so glad to know that. Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good idea. The issues themselves were, they never sold very well. They were, it was more of a, just an uplifting thing for the readers to know that they could come and take over our jobs and do what we did.
Aside from that one famous story about the girl who came to New York and was considered too traditional and too mainstream by her peers, I can't remember her name, unfortunately. Other than that, were there any experiences that you remember from those issues that caught you off guard as to complete opposite of what you were expecting was going to happen?
Wait, I don't know about that. So someone came to New York, and someone who was a reader came and was considered to...
Yeah, somebody wrote an article somewhere that I had found where she had been like a musical theater nerd kid, and she went there and everybody was, pretending to be alternative or whatever, and she felt ostracized by the people who were supposed to be her peers.
I didn't know about that. I hope she didn't feel ostracized by us. By us there at the magazine, because we were pretty welcoming. We had a lot of readers, and increasingly over time would come to New York and make their parents bring them to the Sassy offices so they could meet us and see what it was like and everything. That was really fun for us. And then, for some reason in London also, we had a big, one of my fashion editors, I just remember she was there for some reason. She was like, "We're famous here. Look," and she showed a store where they had pictures of us up on the wall in the store. We were like, "Oh, this is so great." So when things were not, there were constant examples of things where things went awry or got misconstrued, or where I didn't think everything through. Like, we told readers in one issue that they could use red Kool-Aid for hair color. They did, and then one of their moms sued us. It was just a little beauty tip, but she sued us because it doesn't come out, I guess. We didn't really think it through. And so we had to get her to drop her lawsuit, we had to fly her and her daughter to New York City, take them to a salon, get her hair redone, all this kind of stuff. It was funny.
It's amazing. Let's have a look at this McDonald's. This is a newer style McDonald's. It's in Colorado.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
Wow. Well, I don't think that I have any, excuse me, personal association with this.
Oh, yes, you do. You have no idea how much you do. So this McDonald's is just a few feet away from the grave of James Dobson. Would you believe
Oh,
that?
shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, something that
What?
I know you know, but I have not heard you ever talk about,
Hmm.
that I would love to hear you talk about. You and I have talked a lot about child-parent relationships in this conversation. James Dobson, part of his crusade against you seems to have originated from the fact that his mother would beat him and yell at him that he should, and very specifically, not act sassy.
I heard that.
And that sassiness was a bad thing. And by no fault of her own, over time, this came out as a problem for you. Tell me
Yes.
all of, and one more thing before we talk about it, I'm going to show you something you don't know as well. This McDonald's, it's hard to find a McDonald's with 2 stars. This McDonald's is nothing but complaints. For example, really disappointed that my son who has autism can't eat now because his order is messed up. Thanks, McDonald's beef is brown, not golden. They gave her a fish sandwich instead of a hamburger. Instead of just asking for a replacement, she left a 1-star review and complained. And here's another one, which is very long and elaborate, all nonsense, all crazy nonsense. And my point in showing it to you is that this location where he lived and where he's from is just a hotbed of complaining as opposed to actually doing something. And I'm sure that was very ingrained in the culture that he used against you as well. Tell me all about it.
Fascinating. Because this is putting all the pieces together. It's like when I found out that the movie theater where Donald Trump grew up is all gold everywhere, out in Queens, and I was like, oh, so my mom thought of that. That's where he got the idea of all that gold everywhere. That was fancy. Okay, back to this and James Dobson. I have often thought that he put so much effort into taking us down, rather than actually, it's just the same as the friggin' McDonald's people saying, this is a fish sandwich and not what I ordered, rather than just changing it, like rather than coming to us and saying, would you consider this or that, or do you think this is hurtful to teenagers, or anything that could have been from their standpoint productive. Instead of that, he put all this effort in, and we were blindsided. We did not know it was coming. And all of a sudden, we started hearing from our advertisers that they were getting all these postcards saying, I will no longer buy your products if you advertise in Sassy. And they were pulling their ads. And then we heard that people were going to their newsstands and saying, we won't shop in this store if you have that magazine here. And we got taken off 70% of our newsstands. And that was all from him and some of his cronies sending out their newsletter saying Sassy was corrupting children.
But when you were going through it, how did you feel? Like, how did you feel about? Because you were doing your thing, you were on the right path, you were making people happy, you were making money, everything was cool, you weren't trying to bother anybody. If anything, you were doing the thing that he claimed to be doing by bringing people together, making the world an easier place. So how did you feel at that time, if you can remember, of all this attack?
I remember it well. I mean, the truth is, we were, it's funny because we were making money, like the magazine was doing very well, but I wasn't hardly making anything. I didn't care. I was a kid, and what I cared about was the message. And honestly, and I was very activist, when I was at Oberlin and that kind of thing. So I thought it was actually, it meant something good to me that people like him were against what we were doing, and that I could fight it. And I felt strong. Like I felt like, okay, I'm going to fight this thing. Even though he won in the sense of we lost a lot of money, and eventually it did take down the magazine. We just couldn't exist. after a certain point because we had lost so many advertising. We were barely keeping up. But I felt, I just felt justified, vindicated. I felt strong. I felt like I can take this on, and I know that I'm right. So I had no problem. I remember doing an interview with Mother Jones and talking all about James Dobson and the moral majority and all, all of them, and feeling great about being in that role. So yeah, there wasn't a part of me that was cowering or scared or sad or anything like that. Because also, I never intended for Sassy to be around forever. I wanted it to make an impact. And I wanted it to be something where years later, people could be like, yeah, remember that magazine that was around for a little while that was, that really did change things. Maybe we should do something like that now. I wanted it to inspire people in that way. I didn't care that it still existed 40 years later or whatever. That didn't mean anything to me. So if that was going to be its undoing, I was going to be loud about it and get the message out.
That's a great answer. It's not what I expected at all. That's wonderful.
I want to know, did you think I was going to be upset about it?
No. Well, my note says we were both affected by hypocritical bad people who got away with it and then died. That was my follow-up that I would have used in that situation.
Beautiful. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. It's 2016. Let's jump to 2016. Uh-huh. This is a Domino's pizza. I know it is probably not the Domino's pizza you were ordering from because I believe that one has closed in the meantime.
I ordered a lot.
I read about it, and okay.
No one has ever done the kind of research you've done, by the way, Sam.
I doubt that. But
Thank you.
Okay, I tend to focus on the superficial things, and so maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe nobody has ever researched what Domino's you ordered the cinnamon apple desserts from. Okay. At this time, I am living with my cat in a giant house in Las Vegas. I am bankrupt, divorced, out of my mind. Mm-hmm. Social media has really just kicked in. Even though Facebook has been around for about a decade at this point, mm-hmm. social media has really just started to kick in. Mm-hmm. I have a dream I have never had a Domino's pizza in my life, and I have a dream in the middle of the night about Domino's pizza. The next morning, I order one, and I am so embarrassed as a New Yorker when they come to the door that I don't want my neighbors to see me ordering a Domino's pizza. I document this heavily at the time on Facebook. You are ordering Domino's for your daughter Charlotte, and you're getting addicted to those cinnamon apple desserts, as I mentioned in the meantime. And you are also realizing that a big change is coming because of social media. We are both the type of people that are, in terms of media, just a little bit ahead of our time. And I at least was frustrated that it wasn't happening faster. But how were you feeling about it?
Wow, there's so much to say about this. Okay. Well, also, I was so into Domino's, and we ordered it so frequently that they had something then called the Domino's Tracker. I don't know if they still have it. You could track. I remember that was like a big, like newfangled thing at that time. Before
with the radio station, and you could pick which radio station you wanted to listen to while your pizza was getting made.
Oh my God, that's a great detail. Yeah. I actually ended up taking something from that and using it on xoJane called the Jane Tracker. And because I just thought this was so brilliant. That's how early on in all of this technology and social media it was that it seemed really fascinating. You could see where your pizza was. Who was making it. And we would test it and say like, thank you, Abdul, or whatever, thanks, Mary, when they came to the door. And it was never really right. They just were telling. Yeah. And one more question about this. Is this the one on Church Street downtown? This is
I have the address right here, I think. Let me see.
It looks like the one.
I didn't write it. It was the one. It might be. It was I got the sense you were living on the west side and this was on the east side a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, we were not during the main Domino's ordering period. We were in Tribeca, and I thought
Right.
might have been the one that
No, that one. I think that one closed when I had you had written in an article that there was some restaurant like right around the corner from you, and I looked where that was,
uh
and then I tried to find the closest Domino's, and
Oh,
it had gone out of business. So that's why I assumed.
got it. Okay.
All right.
So wait, where were we with the where were we?
Where we're at is like xoJane is screwed, Jane is screwed,
Mhm.
Sassy is screwed, my life is screwed. We're
Uh-huh.
both trying to figure out what we're going to do on social media,
Yeah.
and it's just slowly starting to happen.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. I feel like well, you said that you're ahead of your time, and I I do feel that I'm often trying to do something before the technology is there for it, but then
Yeah.
right, that's happened to me throughout my entire life or career. Um but I think that it was really tricky. Like, okay, so starting Sassy magazine was the easy, like that came so easily. That was, I had the idea, they heard about it, they were wanting to start a new magazine for America. Anyway, as you said, got hired, did it, blah, blah, blah. Jane magazine was much harder. I shopped that around like crazy. It took me years to get someone to back it, and then I did. xoJane took even longer to get started. So each project, and then after xoJane, after that, I left. It got sold, um, folded into In Style magazine, etc. And then I wanted to start another online thing, and that took even longer because everything was moving. I think partly because everything was moving so fast at that point. Um, and I'm not someone that I don't like to, when I'm not promoting something, um, I'm not interested in keeping up like my social media presence just for the sake of it. So I tend to do my projects. They usually last about 8 years. For whatever reason, by the time I get toward the 7, 8, I'm like, okay, I've done it. I've done what I wanted to do. Um, but then after that, I go full hiding. Like I don't even, I just don't do anything but live a quiet life, really. And so that I think I don't want to say it hurt me because everything's an opportunity and all that, but I think that when I was trying to get another Jane Pratt thing off the ground, um, it that was tricky because there were so many people who had done, um, who had branded themselves obviously, and who had done so much more than I had at that point. With everyone could get their message out at that point, um, and so it was, yeah, that was trickier to figure out.
So while that's happening, right? So your daughter was old enough to be on social media at that point. I don't know if she was or she wasn't, but I'm sure that this stuff is seeping in somehow,
Mhm.
right? Like so, even if you're not on it,
Yeah.
you're soul searching. You're like, shit, what am I going to do now? You're kind of wandering around the city doing the normal stuff, but it's seeping in somewhere. You're
Um,
hearing about things. You're watching people Foursquare. You're going to places
oh
and
yeah.
seeing those little Foursquare
Yeah.
stickers up everywhere and those Yelp stickers and like it's happening
Yeah.
and you know it. Are you feeling like you're going to have to learn how to catch up? Are you feeling like you're going to have to pick another lane? Are you feeling like you're just going to, like what were you
Yeah.
going through?
Well, when I started xoJane, actually, that was when was that? 2012, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in 2016 when you're like shopping to Vice.
Okay, great. So we must have started in, yeah, 2010, 2012, something like that. Anyway, starting that leap was really tricky for me because I had been so in the print world and I wasn't really interested in the digital world, and had not, yeah, as you said, like I wasn't really keeping up with social media and that kind of stuff at that point. I mean, we didn't have Instagram at that point. So, but again, as I said, like often I'll have the idea and I'm sure a million other people have the idea too, but I had the idea and I started something on xoJane called Jane's Phone. So I would just take screenshots of what was happening in my phone at that moment and instantly post them, videos, whatever, post them right up onto the site. It was kind of an Instagram type of thing before that existed. Um, but just quick visual, looks into my life. But I had such a big learning curve to figure out how I was going to get people to read this thing and engage with it when there was no newsstand. So there was no place where you were putting it in people's faces, which is what I had been used to. You had to create something where they would find it. But fortunately, I did a ton of publicity at the very beginning. And so we launched with something like 250,000 visitors, and it went up really fast. We got up to 7-8 million. And that was, but I had to learn that. I had to learn about, I learned about Reddit, and I learned about all those other ways that you can drive traffic to your site. So I did know all of those for another Jane Pratt thing. But another Jane Pratt thing is yet different again because it's newsletter format, which I don't like. It's not my forte, unfortunately.
So this is a Burger King.
Mm-hmm.
It is in the parking lot of the now abandoned Northgate Mall in Durham. So this would have been your teenage mall. This Burger King looks like it's a rebuild from the 80s, so it would have theoretically might have been your Burger King, even though you're not a Burger King fan.
I did
there are
go.
lots of,
I mean, it was not my favorite, but I did definitely go. They had the onion ring. It's good.
There are lots of videos of the mall just before it became abandoned, and but this is in the parking lot, so it's still operating. I'm sure after the Vice thing didn't go through and before Jane Pratt thing launched, you must have gotten to a point in your life, just naturally as people do at that point in their lives, where you went back to reflect. I don't think you had started writing your memoir yet at this point, but maybe you were about to start. Mm-hmm. Tell me about this time in your life. Tell me about the mall, of course. Yeah. Tell me all of it.
There is so much to say. This is crazy. I'm looking at what's next to that Burger King and everything, because
it's just one, I'm zooming in. Hopefully you can see.
Okay, this is cool.
It's just this freestanding building in the parking lot.
Yeah, so it was part of, okay. So the actual mall, the main mall is separate, and that's in that parking lot. I know exactly. And did you say it was a bank at one point? Or am I telling you?
No, I said the mall is abandoned. I didn't say anything about a bank. The mall is abandoned,
but there was a bank in the parking lot that was either there or right across from, because
I think there's a bank to the right of it. There's a few stores that are still open on the property.
And there was a little photo mat or something where we could take our pictures to get printed, all right there in that one little unit. Oh my God. And the bank, I remember we would drive up and it was this fancy thing because you could put your check into this canister and then put it back in and it would go, and then the teller inside could get your check out while you stayed in the car. That was fancy. Okay, that mall is my childhood right there. Wow. And my preteen years and early teen years and all that. Okay, I worked at the mall. I had a job at the mall.
Where did you work? Which store?
It was a restaurant, and it was called the Bahoo Container Restaurant. And it was called that because the owner thought that our bodies are containers of food. So it didn't have anything to do with what the food came in, but our bodies are containers. So it was the Bahoo Container Restaurant. And it was all just weird. I remember cheesecake was a big thing there. I was originally the hostess. Then I became I was a waitress. I was the worst waitress because I would get talking to people, forget things. And then I would also want to please people. So if they didn't like their food, I'd be like, it's okay, I'll just go throw it away and get you another one, So I got in trouble a lot. And then I became the cashier and whatever. So I had a long stint at a couple different summers, I think, at the Bahoo Container Restaurant. when I would come home from boarding school. And even prior to that, I also had a creepy incident that I don't know that we need to get into here. It's up to you. But walking home from work at Northgate, because I didn't drive at that time or anything, so it was a little over a mile walk between where I lived and Northgate Mall. So me and my brothers and sisters, we would do that walk a lot. And aside from working there, I mean, I remember there was a car drug store, and that was where we'd go and buy the forbidden candy. A friend of mine was a shoplifter, and she showed me how to shoplift in that store. And we'd shoplift these little troll dolls. But anyway, it's all coming back. That was a huge, Northgate Mall was just a huge part of my like. Also, one day they were doing a radio show thing where they were giving away envelopes full of money, and they would tell you on the radio where to go. And my friend and I, they were giving them away at Northgate Mall. My friend and I went, and we found the people came up to us who were giving away the money, and we got to pick the envelope. And I stupidly picked the thickest envelope, which was the least amount of money because it was all ones. But anyway, I had a lot. Yeah, there was a lot going on at that Northgate Mall. Yeah.
Was there a bookstore in the mall?
There was, let's see, I know there was a
A record store, like any kind of culture stuff that really affected you, at that age?
It was pretty mainstream. It was all pretty mainstream. There was a record store though. And so I would go in there. I remember I bought my little boyfriend at the time a Bob Dylan album from there to give him for his birthday. I don't think they had much alternative music or any of that kind of stuff, but yeah, there were other parts of town that had more alternative, like an alternative film theater and that kind of thing. But this was.
So did you not listen to mainstream music as a teenager?
Until I got to college, I would say it was pretty darn mainstream. I just didn't have access to anything else, which was part of the reason when I was starting Sassy that I wanted to give other kids everywhere access to other artists and of all types that they wouldn't necessarily encounter in their local malls or whatever. Because I was not exposed to that stuff until college.
I just wasn't sure if as a these malls were like fake city centers, and I wasn't sure if in any way like culture seeped in through it to you in that situation or not.
Well, I will say that like North Carolina was weird because it was very divided. There was the Northgate Mall part of Durham, North Carolina, which was very, very mainstream, very conservative, and very sort of Southern in that way. And then there was the artsy part, which is what my parents were more part of. And that was around Duke University and all that. So that was where I, learned about people not all being heterosexual and that kind of thing. So
is that the Chapel Hill area? Is that right?
We were in Durham. Chapel Hill is fancier, but yes, it is big in Chapel Hill too. And my mom had my parents were big into alternative everything. It wasn't called alternative then, but everything. My mom, for her 30th birthday, she had a band called The Weeds, and they played live on our lawn wearing only silver spray paint, nothing else. Yeah. So we, and they would leave us to go to, I remember they left us at home to go to Janis Joplin concerts and, stuff like that. So yeah, I got a lot through them in that way. Okay, where is this guy?
Okay, this is a McDonald's. We started at a McDonald's in California, near Bolinas. We are going to end at another McDonald's in California. Mm-hmm. This is on Western Avenue in Los Angeles. This was my McDonald's as fast food legend was taking off 5 years ago. And this is where my current miniature publishing empire started. not only do all the stuff. I don't think you know this. I make a lot of zines, and I'm selling like 200 magazines a month out of my parents' kitchen
Oh,
by mail,
awesome.
which is shocking. And you are on Substack, which is kind of equally shocking in a way.
Yeah.
We have crossed paths a million different ways and times through this journey we've been on,
Yeah.
and we both kind of ended up in the same place of using the internet to communicate with people and publish our messages.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get the idea to do a Substack? Let's start with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was, as I said, it was tricky for me wanting to get something going after xoJane, when the market was so flooded. And I hooked up with um, a, a a woman who was she was going to back the my new publication, and it was also promotional for the work she was doing, and we had a great run of a, a couple of years of building that thing together. But then it just didn't, in the end, it just wasn't the right fit. So we didn't go through with that. And so I was left thinking, but I still want to do this idea. And I'd already done an interview with Vanity Fair, and they talked about this new project I was doing, and now it wasn't happening. And so the more I looked around, I just decided I'll just publish it on my own, and I'll go back to that old business model of readers pay for subscriptions, and that's what keeps you able to pay the writers, and it's just a basic kind of model. Um, and so I talked to a couple different places and ended up going with Substack. It's I said this before a little bit, but I'm not, for myself, I'm not good at the newsletter format of things. I don't like it. I don't like it for myself that much as a consumer either. I like the entire experience when people go on another Jane Pratt thing and they see all of the stuff that's on there, and they can read as much of it, as little of it. They can scroll around. I like that. I'm not so into just people reading an email that I'm sending them, because I like the visuals also. Um, and uh, and yeah, so I don't like, yeah, I like the my favorite thing is the interactivity. My favorite thing is going into the comments with people, which is also, so I'm not, so in any case, that's where I am with that. But it's growing, and it's doing, it's doing well, and it's got certainly enough readers to keep going and all that stuff. So
But does it feel weird? Does it feel weird that like you're using off-the-shelf software that any teenager can and often does use
yes.
to communicate with this many, like to do the same job that you needed printing presses and offices and insurance and
Yeah.
and payroll and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and you're just using this? Like it's got to feel weird over the course of time. Like
Yeah.
how? Tell me about it.
Yeah, it is. It does feel weird. I mean, I love the aspect of it that everyone has access to the same stuff, and we all can just put our messages out however we want. And it forces, like, because I don't like templated things, I don't like to come out looking like something else. And I fought a lot with Substack at first. I was like, can I please not have that white space there where you have it? Or can I please, have more places where people can get to other parts of what's on the website, link out more and all this kind of stuff. But, I didn't get anything built just for me. And so I had to, I just went with what they had and what anyone can use. So then it's very leveling. And then I have to really work hard to come up with ways to, within those parameters, make it different and make it unique and make it appealing to people. So I do feel like the look, when you go on anotherjaneprattthing.com, the look is unique. And it takes for fucking ever to build every piece because of it. I make like unique art for every piece and stuff like that. But I think it's worth it to create a place where, I mean, that's, at least for me, I like a place where I can go and feel like, okay, I want to keep coming back here, not just getting something in my inbox and deleting it or whatever.
All right. Very last question.
Yeah.
I just looked at the clock. I sincerely appreciate you sitting with me for this long because I probably had 6 years worth of questions. And I'm not a professional journalist by any means.
Great.
Did when you started out with Sassy, telling stories that at the time did not seem mainstream about different things in the culture, people, the way they were living their lives, the things they were dealing with, and you were amplifying it to let other people know that other people were having these problems and bring people together and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Has the world changed so much so fast since then that you've come to a point where you've seen something and been like, I don't even get this anymore? Or do you find something in every story where you find the humanity in it still?
Okay, I want to make sure I understand the question, but
I'll simplify the question in a way that's kind of crude, and I sincerely hope I don't offend anyone in asking it this way, but I want to make sure that everybody gets where I'm coming from. In the 80s, if you ran an article and you said, I'm gay, I'm a teenager, and I have HIV,
right,
and here's my struggles,
right,
that would have seemed to the average American reader to be very controversial.
Yes.
However, at that time, there were probably 30 or 40 or 50 or even 100,000 gay HIV positive teenagers in America who picked up this magazine and were like, wow, that's me. I'm glad we have a safe space to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, in today's world, it would not be remotely shocking for somebody to say that they had 6 different kinds of genitals that had been surgically attached to them, that they were a fan of 2 very contradictory things, and that they were passionate about both, and that they were having trouble getting a job, something like that, getting a mainstream job, like that would be normal now. And everybody would be like, oh, okay. Is there a point in the culture where you start to see stories like that where you're like, I don't know what to do with this?
Okay, so I'm glad that you gave the specifics because that it actually was an issue about, minus the HIV part, which we did write about separately. It was a story about gay teenagers where we pictured them and talked about how they were just like you, but they're coupled with people of the same gender. That was the story that got James Dobson and everyone so really riled up that they, tried to take us down. So back then, it was not hard to be controversial back then. I mean, I could talk about birth control and that was like, what? You're telling teenagers about that? So now you have everything. And I went through the xoJane phase where I have a column called It Happened to Me that I started in Sassy, and it's run through everything I've ever done. And the It Happened to Me's at xoJane were getting to be things like the woman who had went to her gynecologist and she had a cat fur ball from her cat in her vagina. Yeah. And so that kind of stuff would come out, and it was like, wow, there are still untapped areas, and I'm still willing to publish them. Well, everything around that is just, it's, as you said, someone could be saying, I have 6 different types of genitals, and here's what they look like, and and nobody would maybe not even click on it, because it's so out, all of it is so out there. But I keep finding that It Happened to Me submissions that I get them all the time and I run them all the time. They're still unique and different, and they change with the times. They'll change based on what's going on culturally. Now, I did something the other day where someone was revealing how she got caught up in a MAGA related
I saw that
thing. Yeah. And she didn't realize that's what it was. And that still got, I got a lot of cancellations over that because we were anti-MAGA. And
well, I guess that's a perfect example. Like, how surprised were you that you got a lot of cancellations over something like that?
Yeah, I was surprised. And then I have to tell myself, how am I still surprised? Because I've been getting this reaction for almost 40 years now. And how is it that I'm still surprised that people are, are closed-minded in the ways that they are, but they are. Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to name drop, but my guest today was Jane Pratt. I can't thank you enough, Jane.
This was the
Links
best.
to links to everything are in the description. Please check out Another Jane Pratt Thing on Substack. Please, if you're younger and you've never read Sassy, I'm going to have a couple links to archive of Sassy magazines. Flip through them. Trust me, so important. And again, don't forget to text your mom and tell her you watched this interview. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you, Sam. This was so much fun. Thank you for listening, everybody.